Okay, in this video we're going to go through the setup of the DX6i. One of our customers is very nice and is going to let us use his radio for the setup. Okay, let me get up in the programming here. Enter the main menu, model select, dual rate and expo. Let's go inside the dual rate and expo. You need to make sure aileron's going to be at 70% dual rate. The expo is inhibited. Elevator is 70% dual rate, also inhibited on expo. And rudder on dual rate is 100%. That's really it on the expo. Travel adjust, we have throttle at 125%, aileron 100, elevator 100, rudder 100, gyros at 100, pitch is at 125. Subtrim, everything is 0 on subtrim. Gyro is inhibited. Your throttle curve, your low point is 27%. See if how to get in here and let's look at the points here. Your low is at 27%, your 0.2 is at 48.5, your 0.3 is at 70, 0.4 is at 70, and 0.5 is at 70. Let's go back, let's go into your stump mode. Your stump mode, you're simply going to be 70 all the way across. Now on your throttle hold, you're at -10. That's to shut the motor off. Okay, now let's go into your pitch curve. Pitch curve in normal mode. Your low is at 52. Your 0.2 is at 52. Your 0.3 is also at 52. 0.4 is at 76. The high is at 100. Your stump mode. Your low is at 0. 2 is at 25. 3 is at 50. 4 is at 75, high is at 100. Throttle hold, your low is at 52, 0.2 is at 52, 0.3 is at 52, 0.4 is 76, your high is at 100. Okay, that's the it on your pitch curve. Swash mix, you're simply inhibited. Mix 1 and 2 are all turned off. Revo mix is off. Now we'll go to your setup list, which is your menu in the back. Model type, simply on heli. Model name, of course you set whatever main name you want. Monitor, we don't need to look at that. Reversing. You have throttle normal, aileron normal, elevator is reversed, rudder is reversed, gyro is normal, and pitch is reversed. Now, of course, when you go through the setup, still check your directions and make sure it is moving it correctly. But that's the setting we found on this particular one. It's probably correct for DX6i and the Stingray, but it's better to make sure. Swash type is 1 servo 90 degrees. Throttle cut, we're not using throttle cut, which is the button set on this one. We don't use that. We're using throttle hold, which we set in the throttle curve setting. And that is it. Timer. You can set, we just set it at 6 minutes, activate it off of one of the switches. We usually, for mine, I often set it at about 4 minutes, but that depends on the battery size you're using. That should be it. None of the rest of this should you have to use. That's it on the DX6i. Now we're going to get into the actual setting up of the wires. Okay, now we're going to show you how to hook up the TG Multi to your receiver. For this DX6i, I'm using an AR6210X receiver. Other Spectrum receivers should be hooked up in a similar fashion. For hooking it up, you're going to use 2 external cable plugs, both 4-pin plugs on the end. You start by plugging in your first 4-pin plug into plug C. Then you're going to take the top wire, the yellow wire, that's going to go into your throttle, making sure your signal wire is closest to the wording. Then you're going to take the slightly darker yellow wire, plug that into aileron. Then your red wire is going to go into elevator. Your brown wire is going to go into rudder. Now you take your second 4-pin plug here, plug it into D. Now you're going around here to the next brown wire. You're going this way. Throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder. Now you're going to this brown wire, gear. That plugs into gear. And your receiver.
Then you go to your red wire. That's now your aux 1. Now, since with this receiver you're going to have 2 extra aux channels that can't plug into anything, that's fine. You don't need to plug it into anything. Now you want to plug in your power between your receiver and your TG multi. There's a male-to-male plug included. You're going to plug that into plug 1 of the TG multi, making sure to have the brown wire toward the outside. You're going to plug that into the battery bind plug in the receiver. Again, to have the signal wire toward the yellow wire toward the wording. So now you're hooked between the 2 units, the receiver and TG multi. Now you want to hook your ESC up to TG multi. The ESC is both your signal for throttle, it's also your power in to the whole system. I'm going to plug that in to port 2 on the TG multi. So now your power is plugged in. The next thing you do is hook up your servos. Your servo ports are 3, 4, 5, and 6. You start with your front left rotor. That's port 3. So you take your servo from your front left rotor, plug that into port 3. The next is you do your back left rotor. That goes into port 4. Now your back right rotor. That goes into port 5. Now your front right rotor goes into port 6. Everything is now hooked up. All your servos are hooked up. Your power is hooked up to your ESC. Your power between your receiver and your TG multi is hooked up, and all your signals are hooked up between your receiver and your TG multi. Next, we just need to bundle the wires to close it all down. The main thing is when you bundle it, you want all the wires closed down as much as possible. You don't want them in open loops, that kind of thing. You want to make sure it's closed down and bundled with Velcro to reduce any sort of radio interference problems.
Okay, we finished setting up the DX6i transmitter and hooking up the receiver to the TG multi. Now go back through and make sure to watch the Stingray setup video 4A. It's the TG multi setup overview. It also goes again through a radio and plug-in setup. You can just sort of watch that, but you've already done that with these two. Just finish the rest of the setup following the setup of the radio with the lights. Make sure all the lights come on properly. Then you should be well set up to go.